They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud. She tries to deny it now, but you can't really deny it because, you know, it just happened. She shouldn't be allowed to be a congresswoman, and I'm sure people are looking at that. And she should be thrown the hell out of our country. And most of those people, they have destroyed Minnesota, okay? Minnesota, you have an incompetent governor. You have a crooked governor. He's crooked as hell, but he's incompetent. Walz he should be ashamed. That beautiful land, that beautiful state. And all they do is complain, complain, complain. You have her. She's always talking about the Constitution provides me with... Go back to your own country and figure out your Constitution. All she does is complain about this country, and without this country, she would not be in very good shape. She probably wouldn't be alive right now. So Somalia is considered by many to be the worst country on earth. I don't know. I haven't been there. I won't be there anytime soon, I hope. But what Somalia, what the Somalian people have done to Minnesota is not even believable. It's not even believable. And a lot of it starts with the governor.
About billions in fraud become the story about Donald Trump.
We all agree that the fraud story in Minnesota is bad, and yet the topic we're discussing is not the fraud scandal. It's Donald Trump talking about
or the governor who swept it under the rug.
This is why he won in 2016, and it's why he won in 2024, because instead of talking about the outrageous situation in which immigrants who are given the greatest privilege on earth, American citizenship, turned around and stole from the American people, we're talking about how Donald Trump talks about that is his superpower.
This is how we talk about race and ethnicity in this country. We do a lot of categorical denunciations. For a very long time, it was all about kind of black lives and whiteness and what whiteness does. No one should be shocked that this is how we're talking about Somalians in this context as well. And I think in general, if we were to move away from that kind of categorical nonsense, it'd be a little bit easier to take on board the condemnations of the president in this context, as opposed to having to just kind of do it when it's convenient for us. So
what's going on, everybody? It's Talks with Kenny here today, and immigration is back yet again. And I want to talk about more specifically about the liberals, right? Liberalism, their deflection tactics, right? This is why people like me are waking up and leaving liberalism. Instead of being outraged by an outrageous situation, which is Somalians, immigrants, taking advantage of the American taxpayer dollar, committing fraud, right? We open up your arms, and how you reward America's generosity. You scam them, you take money from them, and you use it to live a luxurious lifestyle. Then when we criticize these certain populations of people in a certain state, because we're only really criticizing Minnesota here, the Minnesota Somalians, right? You try to deflect and say that Americans are jealous of you. Oh, you guys are jealous that Somalians are so successful in this country. Be careful how you brag about that, because, you know, 89 Somalians? Damn near it was a whole hustle by people of your community in certain segments of your community. So we don't know if you got that success through legal means or illegal means, right? And now they want to cry racism, right? And this is the double standard, and this is one of the reasons why I agree with the commentary at the end of this of my intro, where he says that the left love to when it's politically convenient, they love to use racial generalities for whiteness, Black Lives Matter, right? But God forbid Trump mentions Somalians in a generalizing statement in Minnesota. Yeah, God forbid. Legacy media is more outraged by how Donald Trump spoke about the issue than the actual issue. And I do truly believe this is Donald Trump's superpower, is that these liberals, they don't want to talk about the real issues. Instead, what they want to do is moralize about how you react to said issue. Make it make sense. Pure deflection. They know it. We know it. It's obvious to see. And I'm glad, you know, there was a special election that I wasn't really paying attention to in Tennessee. And the Democrat candidate lost bigly. They lost very badly, right? But these are the kind of candidates that the Democratic Party want. Here's Cartier family. And one thing I want to correct in the comment section is that I got some criticism for people saying that, Kenny, you're becoming a little too like extreme on the immigration issue. And it's not like I'm extreme. I'm just tired of the disrespect, right? I think it's ridiculous that being an American who is pro-American, which is how I identify myself, makes you a bad person. But you can be an immigrant that immigrates to a different country, be pro wherever you came from, and that's accepted. And I'm tired of that double standard. I'm proud of being American. You assimilate to my culture. You came in my country. You better value liberty, individualism. You better value all that because that's American culture right there, right? Personal responsibility. You deciding your own fate, right? But all these people migrate from a different country, complain about the country that they immigrate to, and then when people say go back, you want to call it a racist statement. But you so proud from where you came from that you lead in with that. I'm a Mexican American. I'm a Somalian American. What? You're American or you're not. That's how I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to be very anti like dual identity kind of thing right now. I don't have nothing against dual nationals. Nothing, honestly. But I'm tired of this physiology of hyphenated American. That's a pet peeve of mine. But without further ado, I want to play more from the segment that you just saw, a little snippet of that segment. And it just goes to show that on the immigration issues, liberals really have nothing. And this is where I keep trying to go back to. Middle America, I'm appealing to you because you're the only one that could be swayed at this point. We shouldn't reward Democrats with more power because all they have is deflection. They're not mad that they just caught migrants scamming the American system, American social services system. They're not mad about that. They're mad that Trump reacted a certain way to it. They're mad that Trump didn't react the way that they think Trump should react. Make it make sense. But I digress. Let's watch the segment where this liberal gets called out for deflection. Let's take a look.
We've got the war crime situation. Voters increasingly know. He said he was going to bring prices down. Prices are not down.
In fairness, though, this is the deflection that I'm talking about. There is a legitimate issue here.
Any instances of fraud prosecuted.
The failure of Minnesota officials who actually permitted this kind of nonsense to take place.
That's not why
wait a minute.
That is precisely why people are talking about it.
The governor of Minnesota, who didn't answer any of the whistleblowers or the warning signs on this scandal, who swept it under the rug, nearly became the vice president of the United States.
Precisely
and
right.
everyone in the American news media ignored this. The New York Times is just now reporting on a scandal that's been years in the making. Why? Why didn't they do a deep dive on Tim Walz and the campaign?
Hold on.
How is this possible?
Wasn't it Merrick Garland of the Biden administration that brought many of these charges in the first place?
Yes, and Tim Walz.
So are you really suggesting that Democrats ignored it, even though a Democratic...
Tim Walz is an incompetent governor, and yes, he ignored it.
Attorney General of a Democratic administration prosecuted the case.
It's fraud within a state program in Tim Walz's administration.
I'm telling you, this immigration issue, there's a reason I'm talking about it so much. I truly believe all this attention on immigration and all the ways that Democrats turn a blind eye and enable this stuff, I think it's beneficial to the messaging of the conservative movement and the Republican Party to message on this, because I believe many Americans need to be aware of the actual situation, not the fairy tales, not the story, not the narratives that liberals are trying to tell you on immigration. You have to see for yourself and weigh the two options. Look at what the Republicans are pointing out. Look at what the Democrats are trying to shield and deflect from. Pathetic moment as Hakeem Jeffries, a.k.a. Bootleg Obama, some calls him Timu Obama, tries to whizzle his way out of giving Trump credit for securing the border when CNN presses him. Can you give Trump any credit for securing the border? Jeffries, the border is secure. That's a good thing. And you're going to say it happened under Biden. I bet. It happened on his watch. He wanted to claim credit for it. Of course, he'll get credit for that. But in dealing with the issues that matter, there's a lot to be desired. Always. And I talk about this. The tactic of the Democratic Party right now is not to offer any alternatives, but it's to get America in this mode where we're impatient with Donald Trump, because that's the best option they got right now. Make it make sense. Democrats' best messaging for Americans in the middle is, well, Trump is not solving the problems fast enough. And my question to the Democrats are, okay, if Trump's not solving the problems fast enough, what the hell are you going to do? Can you do a better job? They ain't gonna promise that. They're gonna say we're gonna resist Trump, though. That's one thing they can for sure promise. And this is what I'm talking about, right? And Democrats want to pretend all this stuff is so bad and, so bad now. It's Thursday. At the time of me releasing this video, it'll be Thursday. I want to throw a little throwback here, right? Because in my mind, if someone asks me, Kenny, you're not really a centrist, right? Because this is what people on my comment section will say. They say I'm extremely right-wing. They say I'm not really a center-right person, all this jazz, right? And I always say, I was more likely, if I was to think of a Democrat that I was most likely to vote for, it would be Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah, wait, before you kill me in the comment section, I'm talking about 2009 Barack Obama. Let's take a look.
This is not going to be a free ride. It's not going to be some instant amnesty. What's going to happen is you are going to pay a significant fine. You are going to learn English. You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally. But after you've done these things over a certain period of time, you can earn your citizenship. So that it's not something that is guaranteed or automatic. You've got to earn it, but over time, you give people an opportunity. Now, it only works, though, if you do all the pieces. I think the American people, they appreciate and believe in immigration, but they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it. So we've got to deal with that at the same time as we deal in a humane fashion with folks who have put down roots here, have become our neighbors, have become our friends. They may have children who are U.S. citizens. That's the kind of comprehensive approach that we have to take. All right?
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the current holder of the title, Deporter-in-Chief, Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah. At least it's reasonable, right? Now, for me, it's like once, if you're here illegally, you're deported, and you lose any right to go through the process legally. I'm at, like, my thing is, if you're caught illegally in this country, right, and Trump is doing a humane thing, you may not like it, you may think it's kind of rough, but I think it's humane. I'm sending you back to your homeland, right? I'm sending you back where you can speak the language, right? And in my estimation, I'll give you the option to self-deport, like Trump is doing right now. Hey, self-deport. Because if you're apprehended by ICE, to me, you lose any. It's a knock against you when you try to apply the legal way, which is kind of what Brock was saying in the beginning, in the kind of the middle of the speech there. Now you're gonna go in the back of the line. No. You're gonna go like 5 years back in the line. That's how far back that's a penalty on you to create an incentive. But then, after 2009, after Barack Hussein Obama deported all these people, right? Because he was talking about 500,000 people just flooding into the country. His VP, 10 years later, 12 years later? Not even 12 years later. Sorry, I'm getting my dates mixed up. 11 years later, allowed almost 11 million people to cross the border? What happened to the Democratic Party? I'm telling you, the Democratic Party stopped making sense the minute they made common sense a right-wing thing. And then this has been my main anchor point, right? So for all my critics in the comment section, most likely they're liberals, right? Who can't see that, I can have some positions that's considered hard right, but for the most overall, I'm a centrist. I'm not a centrist, but I lean towards the right. I can see, both sides' points, but for the most part, I think Republicans' approach to a lot of these problems is the more practical solution. And everything else is more like we're trying to deny reality and live in fairy tale and fantasy land. Like we can pay for all this stuff. Like our resources aren't finite. Like we're not $38 trillion in debt. And I believe one of the reasons why, no matter who's in office, the debt keeps growing is because we give Democrats a significant minority to the point that they can obstruct and get in the way of what the Republican Party can do. That's one of the biggest reasons why we still dealing with debt, no matter which person is president. That's just my opinion. But without further ado, I think Another reason why Americans are leaving liberalism, right, especially many in the middle, why many Democrats are giving up voter registration and becoming independents, is because of the fact that the current brand of the Democratic Party, and I think it's hard for any Democrat to really argue this, only Democrats will believe that Democrats are somehow for the country. I believe many people who are not Democrat, right? Non-Democrats believe, and this is the brand that Democrats brung on themselves, is that they're the party of foreigners. They're the party of globalism. They're the party of America last. Americans are always prioritized last for the Democratic Party. Right? And John Fetterman, in my estimation, he's the cure to this destructive brand that the Democratic Party has painted themselves in. But they keep pushing candidates like this lady here. I don't even know how to say her name, but this is the Democrat that ran for the House seat in Tennessee. And she, open borders, right? She's everything that the woke liberal left love in New York, but she couldn't win in Tennessee. Why Democrats ain't highlighting her loss and saying, "Oh my God, this is a turning point for the Republican Party"? No, I'm not saying, "Oh my God, look, the Republicans are shooing for 2026." No, this is a deep red state. I expected a Republican to win this one. The same way when the runoff elections, Madami and all these candidates from attorney generals and governors from lean blue, deep blue states and cities, they won their races. I wasn't tripping over it. But the left was doing victory laps online, talking about how the MAGA movement woke up the left. You're supposed to win those races. Republicans are supposed to win these races. And that goes to show that I think socialists and all these progressivism ain't ready for prime time, ain't ready for the national level.
I'm shocked at Democrats' willingness to defend illegal immigrants, narco-terrorists. I mean, basically anybody that's not an American citizen, you're first in line in the Democratic Party right now. I do not understand it as a strategy. Oh, look, I think I'm a political operative. I worry about everything. And I'm sure you do too. Special elections have a different turnout matrix, A. B, it is true Democrats have more motivated and also more reliable voters in their party right now, so that affects turnout in odd year or off year or special elections. There are lessons to learn here, but there's still a few more election day votes to count. The margin may grow a little bit. The last poll showed Democrats within 2 points. I think if we learned anything in this special election, it's that the Democratic candidate here, who was objectively cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Wait, I was going to call her a little wackadoodle.
That is the median Democrat candidate right now. She is basically center-cut Democrat is what you got out of Tennessee. You're going to see it all over the country.
Southern Democrat, I have to say.
So, what Scott Jennings was playing little games there, but this point still stands in my estimation, is that she's the kind of Democrat that Democrat voters want more of. That's the reality. No one can deny that. That's the reality. This is why in blue states, they don't want to share any data about what's going on. They're going to say it's for privacy concerns, but people who receive snaps have to submit their social security number, their address, their income to the government to get benefits. But for some reason, blue states can't give data to the federal government about who's on SNAP. Right? Because they're trying to hide. To me, I told you, the Tim Walz stuff, it was a smoking gun. It highlights to me, in my speculation, that the odds are in my favor that the Democrats across the nation are doing something similar or turning a blind eye to things that they shouldn't be turning a blind eye to, like illegals on their SNAP programs, like illegals voting in their election. Even though some of them pass laws, obviously. Some of them say, hey, if you're a resident here, you're allowed to vote in local elections, right? But they want to, this is the game. All of this benefits Democrats politically. So as a person, I'm talking to people in the middle. Why would we allow people in this country being used as political pawns, right? Because I talked about how a lot of these companies, especially the manual labor jobs, they use illegals as a way to undercut and ignore the American worker, right? Whole towns can't get a job, right? We got a lot of homeless, a lot of unemployed people in this country as Americans, native-born Americans. Can't find jobs because companies want cheap labor. And then we talk, and then the liberals, right? This is why a lot of people are leaving liberalism. This is why a lot of people can't stand the hypocrisy of the liberalism. Because when it's time for liberals to live up to their own values, they fall short of their own values. Yet they expect you to live up to yours. Make it make sense. You talk about, oh, we don't like people being exploited, right? Oh, black people are exploited by the system. But they don't want to talk about how Democrats are exploiting illegals. They don't talk about how Democrats let let migrants in Minnesota, certain class of migrants in Minnesota, turn a blind eye and let them use and abuse and exploit the American system, putting a burden on the system, creating budget shortfalls, increasing budgets. A budget went from $2.1 million for COVID relief. It ballooned to $21 million because of the fraud that was being done by some Somali migrants living a luxurious lifestyle at the taxpayer's expense. And Democrats just roll it over their shoulder. They're not mad about that happening. No, they're more mad about how Trump is reacting to this stuff. Make it make sense. And this is why liberals are all fluff, all flash, no substance. Because they want you to focus on, they want you to get mad about what Trump is saying about Somalian migrants in Minnesota instead of the actions that caused Trump's reaction, which is more substantive. Complaining about Trump's demeanor and behavior, like y'all haven't been doing that for the last 10 years, Democrats, or complaining about things that politically makes you guys look bad. And I call this out consistently. Journalists is the most liberal profession in the world. Who are they more politically incentivized to talk about? Trump's reaction to the Somalian situation, the Somalian tax fraud, or the fact that Democrats turn a blind eye to waste, fraud, and abuse? Which is more politically expedient for a profession known as the most liberal profession in the world? You already know the answer. And this is a part of media literacy that I'm trying to really expose out there. You can call me biased. You can call a lot of people biased. But I'd rather have an honest bias than dishonest objectivity. And in my estimation, everyone has some level of bias. What you should judge is how well the person can account and mitigate their bias from corrupting their commentary, their analysis, because it seems like liberals have a hard time doing that. I got numerous examples. I got receipts. Look at Google. 94% of the engineers in Google are liberals, donate to the Democratic Party. Look what happened with Gemini AI. Something that has nothing to do with politics. And their bias bled into their work to the point that the Gemini AI wouldn't generate you a white family. Gemini AI was generating black Nazis, historically inaccurate images of black Washington, George Washington. Gemini AI, created by liberal engineers in Google. And you telling me the same thing is not happening with journalism right now, considered the most liberal profession in the world? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. And you wonder why people don't trust the legacy news. You wonder why people have a problem with legacy news. You wonder why people call out leftists for being in an information bubble. Because instead of talking about the real issues and actually giving an actual approach or alternative solution to the problems that are being pointed out, they rather deflect, character assassinate, right? Distract, cry, and complain about how someone's reacting to something. When Americans are like, you're not an alternative. All you are is resistance. And Trump controls all that. But I digress. I think I ranted enough on this video. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comments section below. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate this video. If you feel so inclined, it really does help me out on the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.